So it's been a few weeks and we finally had round 2 of the F1 Academy Championship. Obviously China was, in the nicest way, a little bit of a dud. We didn't get to see much racing action because of the constant safety cars in race 1. We had a safety car in race 2, but we got to see a little bit more action. Fortunately, this time around we didn't have as many incidents and we actually got to see some really good racing. I've actually watched the races quite a few times since Sunday. Honestly, I'm more than happy to watch them again. They were really good races and it sets a good precedent for what we're gonna have this year. Obviously, we had a good qualifying session. Race 2 was really good. Actually, I'm not even say just race 2 because race 1 and race 2 were superb, especially by the front running pack. So let's go into free practice. A pretty quiet session overall. We didn't see as many incidents as we did in China. Obviously, last time out in China, we had that big incident between Leah Block and Rafael Ferreira. We did only see one lot of yellow flags for our wildcard driver this weekend, Ferrara Al Youssef. So yeah, it was a really standard quiet session. We saw Maya Vug top the timing sheets. She went in with a 2-minute 5.357. Now this time does generally get decreased over the weekend. You don't normally see the top times in practice. You know, you're not going to show your full hand like I said in the last video. So I ran you down free practice because I haven't really got much to say about it because not much happened. It was just the girls getting a grips for the track because the Jeddah Corniche circuit, even for F1 drivers, is quite difficult. And like they were saying on the commentary, it's a matter of how much driver confidence you have. If you don't have the confidence to take the corners, you know, to the limit, you're not going to get the most of your lap time and you're just going to fall behind to the drivers that do have the confidence. Obviously, we have a lot of rookies. Like I said, Maya took the fastest time with 2-minute 5 and Alicia Pomolsky was behind her. She was literally only 0.03 seconds off Maya's time, which is pretty impressive from the Red Bull backed driver. So Dorian Pan came in P3. She was not that far behind them. She's only 0.2 off Maya Book, her old teammate, with a 2-minute 5.5. And again, the gaps between these drivers are generally quite small. Chambers literally came behind Pan literally by 1/10. Locke was behind Chambers by 2/10, followed by Ella Lloyd in P6. She had a bit of a weird start to China. She is improving. Aurelia Nobles in P7, Tina Hausman in P8, Chong in P9, and Emma Feldmeyer in P10. So yeah, the gap between P1 and P10 is 1.1 seconds, but they're very it's a very gradual increment. It's not like somebody's suddenly 5/10 behind the driver in front of them. It is a very close field. We had Nina Gaiman behind Emma Feldmeyer, just missing out on that top 10. Courtney Crone in P12, Rafaela Ferreira in P13, Shishante in P14. So we have our top rookie from last race, Alba Larson, she's in P15. Ava Anagorostades, she is in P16. Nicole Havrada, P17. We have our wildcard, Ferrara Al Youssef, rounding out the grid. So let's jump into qualifying. This was an interesting session. I have quite a lot of notes at the bottom of my page for this session. As always, it is the reverse top 8 for qualifying, so whoever comes P1 will go to P8 and whoever goes to P8 will go to reverse grid pole for Saturday's race 1. So our McLaren backed driver Ella Lloyd was the first out in qualifying. She went in with a 2-minute 6.5. She did have a slight look up going into turn 27. A lot of drivers struggling at this final corner. She did manage to improve straight away on her second run. She managed to improve by 2/10. Maya Vug then went nearly 5/10 faster after that, setting the precedent for what this session is going to look like. However, we did see an early red qualifying flag. All drivers were okay. I'm always going to state first and foremost that drivers are okay. But yeah, unfortunately, like I said, a lot of people were struggling with turn 27. Leah Block still not having a good start to her season. She crashed at turn 27. Like I said, she was completely fine. She managed to get out of the car okay. She was quite upset. You can see it within her body language. She was really upset with herself. So after our red flag period, they managed to clear the car away. We then saw Ella Lloyd improve again, and the top 3 being Maya Vug and Alba Larson following. We did see a little bit of a qualifying head-to-head between Pomolsky and Chambers, the 2 Red Bull juniors, one being the main Red Bull team and the other being Red Bull Ford. Yeah, they were just going back and forth, trading times. Maya Vuk managed to go to P3 on her very final attempt. She was obviously aiming for another pole position. Dorian Pan actually got the benefit of the toe from Ella Lloyd. Ella Lloyd seemed to be having an interesting session. She was going here, there, and everywhere, and then helped out Dorian Pan unintentionally. But Chloe Chambers, the Red Bull Ford driver, she managed to get pole position. This is actually Campos's second ever pole in F1 Academy. So she managed to go in with a 2-minute 4.320. Even Dorian Pan with the toe was still 2/10 of Chambers. So Dorian, we know her from last year. She's very, very quick. She obviously just hasn't mastered it in quali this year. She obviously has a lot more competition. Obviously last year it was kind of just Dorian versus Abby, whereas this year we've had like a few people come up, Vuk being one of them. I think on the back of last year, Vuk was then starting to get her grips with the car. So Vuk's obviously the challenger this year. We've got Chambers, Polmolski, but alas, she was still only 2/10 off of pole position this time round. Maya Vuk, like I said, she went to P3 on her final attempt. She was about 3 attempts behind Dorian, and then followed by Polmolski, who had a very, very tiny gap to Vuk. Same with Larson, she was also in the 2-minute 4.8 in P5. Then Tina Hausman in P6. She's having a good time so far. She has a good weekend overall. Ella Lloyd, who went to P7. Elba Felbermeyer, who gets reverse grid pole with a 2-minute 5.1. Nina Gaiman in P9, and I must say, I admire Nina Gaiman quite a lot. She had a really good wildcard debut last year. For those of you who didn't know, they had a F1 Academy test in Jeddah. I think it was a week or so before the race, or 2 weeks or so before the race, where Nina Gaiman was involved with in a really nasty accident during testing. She was involved in a crash. I've yet to actually see a video of the crash, but I know it was quite serious. She had to be taken to hospital, and she's actually been saying, like, in interviews since, she's been in quite a bit of pain. You have to take, whether you like her or not, you have to take her hat off to her. She'd had a really good weekend despite battling, I think it was back pain she was having. Chloe Chong rounds out the top 10. We have Joanne Shishonte in P11, Aurelia Nobles, followed by Rafael Ferreira, Courtney Crone, Nicole Habrida, Anagon Estades, our wildcard Farah Al Youssef, and Leah Block not setting a time. It was an interesting quali. We actually got to see more of a pole battle, especially with Polmolski and Chambers. Obviously, Chambers coming out on top for that. But despite the battle, Polmolski was in 4th compared to Chambers in 1st. She had Pan and Vug in between her. So it's not always a straight shot for pole, which is, you gotta go into the weekend not knowing what's gonna happen, you know, which is better than, I guess last year, I know I'm a massive Abby fan, so, you know, to see Abby dominate the championship is obviously a good thing from my perspective, but you kind of went into every single race last year thinking it's gonna be Abby, or, you know, it's gonna be Pan if it's not Abby. Whereas this year, we so far have not had a consistent, you know, it's gonna be this one. I think so far we've kind of thought it's gonna be Vug, because Vug seems to have a little bit of advantage, but Vug even went behind Pan in this session, so it's not always a straight like it's going to be Vuk. We've had Chambers so far. Vuk got pole last time, but Pan is still there, and so is Polmolski. So it's not a straight shootout so far, which I'm actually quite enjoying. So let's slide our way into race 1. This was a good race, not as many safety cars and not as many penalties as race 1 in China. So we'll start off with our top 8 just to run you through that, because obviously it's a reverse top 8 grid. So from pole position, we saw Emma Felbermeyer. On P2, we saw Ella Lloyd, the McLaren driver. P3, Tina Hausman, a really good start for her. P4, we saw Alba Larson. P5, Alicia Polmolski. P6, Maya Bug. P7, Dorian Pan. And our pole sitter for race 2, Chloe Chambers, sat in P8. Obviously, everyone from P9 down stays in the same position. So we had 2 rookies on the front row, which is always an interesting start. Obviously for Emma Felbermeyer, she was quite excited to be starting on pole. She just wanted to maximize her start, make the most of the experience. But for lights out and away we go, we saw Ella Lloyd get a cracking start and literally get Emma Felbermeyer on the line. She just had a really, really good start, the McLaren Welsh driver. We had quite a lot of jockeying for positions. Luckily, everyone kept it clean. We did see an incident on lap 4 where we saw our Haas driver, Courtney Crowe. She did rear-end her fellow countrywoman, Leah Block, who then goes on to clear Chloe Chong. This is the only safety car we saw during the race. Yeah, nothing more said about that. It was just a clumsy move by Courtney. Didn't end Leah's race. Luckily, Leah was able to continue. She didn't have any visible damage, but it did mean the retirement of Chloe Chong. So we had a brief safety car period. Safety car went in on lap 8. Courtney Crowe did receive a penalty for that incident. She received a 10-second penalty. Safety car goes in on lap 8, more jockeying for positions. We did receive a comment from Dorian Pan concerning Alba Larson because they were jockeying for, I believe it was P4. Dorian literally came on the radio and just went, she's moving 100 times, meaning she's moving under braking quite a lot, which is very frowned upon in the world of racing. But yeah, Alba Larson, I would say it was firm but fair. Her defense from Dorian Pan. Obviously, Dorian Pan did eventually get past her. We also saw on lap 9 the retirement of Courtney Crone. So she went into the pits. I don't know if they found damage, but it looked like they were not happy to continue in the race. We saw another couple penalties come in. We saw Nicole Havrida. She got a 5-second penalty for a safety car infringement. And we also saw our wild card, Farah Al Youssef, gets a 5-second penalty for a false start. They both came in around the same time. So yeah, we saw quite a few battles for the podium positions, but it was McLaren's Ella Lloyd who took the race win in race 1. She had a really, really good drive. A nice, comfortable drive. Kind of Oscar Piastri-esque. I know that's just a McLaren effect she's getting, but a really solid drive from Ella Lloyd. She controlled the race, she controlled the restart, and she was on top. We saw Maiva come home in P2. She was literally less than 2/10 off Ella Lloyd, and Alicia Pomolsky comes home in P3 to round out the podium positions. We saw Dorian Pan in P4 after that battle with Alba Larson. She did get the fastest lap of the race on lap 11. Alba Larson coming in just behind Dorian. Again, another solid race from Larson. Tina Hausman, a good race from her. She's got some points on the board, or more points on the board, I should say. Coming home in P6. Chloe Chambers, our pole sitter for tomorrow, in P7. And Nida Gaiman, like I said, she has a good weekend despite her troubles. Comes home to take the final points in this little sprint-esque race, even though it's the same length as race 2. Emma Felbermeyer, she was on pole, went down to P9. She just kind of kept going backwards ahead of Aurelia Nobles in P10. Joanne Chante started P11, stayed in P11. Leah Block went to P12 after that nasty incident in qualifying. Then a little bit of a punt from Courtney Crone. She managed to stay in P12. Rafael Ferreira, she stayed in P13. Iva Anagorastadis, P14. Nicole Havrida, P15. And rounding off the grid, Farah Al Youssef, our wildcard, in P16. We had Courtney Crone retiring in the pits on lap 9 after that collision with Block and Chong obviously retiring from the collision. So an interesting race 1. We didn't see as many incidents. I think it was just a beautifully controlled race from the young Welsh driver out in front. Vug still put up a fight for that P1 position. We saw again our rookie Alba Larson. She just battled like she's been in F1 Academy for years. I'm expecting good things for her this season. I feel like she might be the top rookie at this point. I don't want to jinx her because I do really, really like the Tommy Hilfiger driver. I did have a thought when Dorian made that comment, like, she's moving 100 times. I did sort of say to myself, I was like, well, if you're mentored by the Kevin Magnussen, you're gonna probably end up defending like him. So let's move on to race 2. Now, we saw a lot of jockeying for positions in race 2. It was a really good fight out front. So obviously we are going from qualifying positions, no reversing here. So lights out and away we go. And we had a few slow starters. They didn't really do like an onboard POV for any of them, but I managed to catch who were the slow starters. So we had Ella Lloyd, Joanne Chichonte, Courtney Crone, Leah Block, and Farah Al Youssef. I think those were the only slow starters, whether it be they stalled, whether they just didn't get going fast enough. But luckily no collisions, they were all alright, they managed to get going. Obviously Chambers on pole, she had a little bit of a battle with Vug. This race was just kind of Chambers v Vug for the most part. We did see on lap 2, Rafaela Ferreira, the RB Junior, she rear-ended Emma Felbermeyer. Luckily there was no damage done there. She did get a penalty for causing a collision though, which was 10 seconds. However, let's move on to the most talked part of the race. I tried to lean back in my chair and it didn't work because I'm already up against the the desk. We could go back to, Abu Dhabi 2021, but I'm not going to do that to my dear fans, or whoever watches this. I don't know who they are. We saw this jockeying for position between Vug and Chambers on the opening few laps. Chambers forced Vug wide at turn 22, quite wide, and they were saying on commentary, Chambers could argue Vug didn't give enough space. Vug can argue, well, she pushed me off the track. And the stewards decided with the latter that Chambers did force Maya wide. She got a 5-second penalty for that. So basically, it was just a race against time for Chloe Chambers. She needed to pull out this 5-second gap on Vuk. Bearing in mind, she was still in the lead of the race from pole. We saw a few little battles here and there up and down the grid. We had Pan and Palmolsky. Those were the main ones. Everyone had a fairly decent sized gap between them. Literally, the last 2 laps were basically the laps of her life. And like she was saying in the cooldown room, she was just having to do qualifying laps to just keep whatever position she could. So I think it was kind of inevitable that Vuk was going to overtake Chambers. She was always a second or 2 seconds behind her consistently. So it was more of a case of, is she going to finish 2nd, 3rd, or 4th at this point? Palmolsky kind of backed off a little bit. She was kind of in a race of her own. So then it was just a case of, is she going to stay in front of Pan or is she going to fall behind Pan? And with that, on lap 13, the final lap of the race, Chloe Chambers sets the fastest lap, which meant she just, and I mean literally just, got to keep P2. You can see it on the commentary. It was literally teetering between 4.9 seconds to 5.1 seconds between Chambers in 3rd and Pan in 3rd. And it was tense. She literally managed to keep P2 on the final lap. So while she took P1 on track, it was Maya Vuk who took the race win. Although that, pushing Maya wide moment, I think Chambers had a really, really good race. It was just one of those things you kind of have to learn. You're not allowed to do that. But nonetheless, I think she had a really good race. Shame it, obviously, she never got to reap the rewards of it. But once again, Maya Vuk standing on top of the podium. She was very happy with that. So we have Maya Vuk taking the race win, followed by Chloe Chambers with that penalty. Dorian Pan just missing out on that P2, but she got to stay P3, and she said it was the best she could do, and she was still quite happy with it. So good for Dorian. Alicia Palmolsky just missing the podium in P4. Alba Larsen, another great result for her in P5. Tina Hausman, P6 again. Yay, Tina. She was 4 seconds behind the Tommy Hilfiger driver. Nina Gaidman, a solid finish in P7. Ella Lloyd in P8, yesterday's race winner. Joanne Shante picking up her first points in F1 Academy. Yay! Same with Chloe Chong, who rounds out the points in P10. Aurelia Nobles literally misses the points by a second, followed by Courtney Crone, who had a bit of a more quieter race than she did on Saturday. Rafaela Ferreira with that early penalty, she dropped to P13, followed by Leah Block in P14. Emma Felbermeyer, she just seemed not to have a very good race. Again, she just went backwards, obviously not feeling this sort of track. She went from P8 to P15, the poor Sauber driver. Nicole Havrida, again, another quiet race for her in P16. Iva Anna Stardust in P17. Farah Al Youssef finishing quite far behind the back of the field in P18. So race 2, what did we learn? We learned that the drivers, they're not afraid to get their elbows out, especially the more experienced drivers. You could argue, oh, they got a penalty from that, but it shows they have balls in a metaphorical sense. So let's move on to the driver standings. I do have them behind me, but obviously I will read them out to you because they're not very clear on the camera. So now, with 2 rounds under our belt, we have a new championship leader, Maya Vuk. She's in P1, just 7 points ahead of former teammate Dorian Pan. Chloe Chambers, with that good weekend, is in P3, followed by Alicia Palmolsky, still going steady in P4. Alba Larsen still keeping up that good streak for the young rookie in P5. Ella Lloyd with a race win. She's in P6 in the championship, followed by Tina Hausman. A really good race from Tina. She just kind of went under the radar a little bit. We don't talk much about Tina Hausman. She's kind of in the points or thereabouts. But, she had a bit of a weird start in China with that incident with her teammates, but she seems to redeem herself this weekend. Emma Feldmer, she didn't unfortunately score any points, but she managed to keep hold of P8. For Rafael Ferreira, again, who didn't score any points, but Nina Gaidman is now tied with Rafael Ferreira for 9th with 8 points. Leah Block in P11, Joanne Chante getting her first points of the year, first points in her F1 Academy career. Iva Anna Stardust in P13, but Chloe Chong getting her first points of the year in P14. Still yet to score, we've got Aurelia Nobles, Courtney Crone, and Nicole Havrida. So the constructors, Campos are still in the lead, but only 2 points separating them from MP. MP had a really good weekend, especially in race 2 where they got 37 points. Kramer is still in P3 with a very, very healthy lead ahead of Roden Motorsports. ART and High-Tech still remain the same, neither of those teams scoring any points this weekend. So with that being said, this is kind of the point where we start to settle into the championship. China was a little bit of a, welcome to F1 Academy sort of race for a lot of them, racing against each other for the first time. Whereas Jeddah were like, okay, we can see these lot are going to be our front runners. So people like Verg, Pan, Chambers, Polmolsky. In terms of the rookies, we've got Larson and Lloyd doing quite well. Emma Feldmeyer did do well last weekend, didn't have as good of a race this weekend. Like I said, a lot of respect to Gademan with her injury, still scoring points. Obviously, we've got a few others scoring their debut points like Shante and Chong. Hopefully, they can start to score more points. And obviously, our 3 remaining drivers who are yet to get off the mark, we can hope that maybe next time in Miami, they can get lucky. So like I did before with Shi Wei in China, I've decided to do a little bit of a deep dive on our wildcard driver for this weekend. So our wildcard driver was Farah Al Youssef. She's from Saudi Arabia and she's actually from Jeddah, funnily enough. So this is literally her home track. I didn't find a date of birth for her again. I don't know why. This is the second time this has happened. But I did manage to find out a couple of reports that she's 22. So she's either born in 2003 or 2002. She's probably a similar age to what I am. So her racing career, I believe, started when she was in her teens. I didn't manage to find a lot of official championships she's been in, but the ones I did find, I can elaborate a little further on. She did win the Saudi Women's Karting Championship in 2022, and she was also in the Karting World Finals as well. She did move to the UK as well, so she turned to the UK racing scene. Which is not a bad move. A lot of drivers do travel to the UK to get into the European scene. So yeah, a big career move. Did manage to find she was earlier this year in the F4 Middle Eastern Championship. She was P30 overall. In the Rookies Championship, she was P13 with 35 points. So not a bad start for her. And she's also going to be competing in the Formula Women's Nations Cup, which I believe is in May. So a little additional information about our wildcard for this year. She became the first Saudi female to qualify for a race in the Formula Women. I've seen Formula Women here and there. I think I follow them on TikTok, and they're basically just I don't want to say an academy, they're like a series trying to boost women into motorsport. They support quite a lot of young female drivers, Farah being one of them. And another reason why she moved to the UK, so she actually goes to Manchester University. She studies aerospace engineering, and currently she's taking a year out to focus on her racing career. So while she's not racing, obviously I believe she's still on that year to focus. She's studying aerospace engineering, which is pretty cool. I hope she's going to have a really, really good career. She's still young, she's 22, she's got a lot behind her, and even if she doesn't end up in racing, an aerospace engineering degree, that could probably get you a lot of places. We also got to see, I have to mention this, we also got to see Rima Jafali, who was our Jeddah wildcard last year, and she was talking to Farah quite a bit. So that is Saudi Arabia, that is Jeddah done, so the drivers can probably breathe a little bit. Or at least till Las Vegas, which is then going to be the next tricky track. So, do I have questions answered? Do I have more questions? So, I think we can start to see who our front runners are. It's mainly Vug, Pan, Chambers and Polmolsky. So it's kind of 3 that have been in it before, plus a wild card with a lot of experience. I'm quite excited for this little battle. I can't tell if it's going to be a 2-way head-to-head or if it's a 3-way battle or a 4-way battle. I can't really tell at the moment. China, we kind of thought it was Pan v Vug, whereas this time it was kind of Chambers v Vug v Pan v Polmolsky, depending on how you look at it over the weekend. Miami, who knows? It could be maybe Polmolsky on top. We don't know yet. Polmolsky obviously getting her race win in China. Pan getting a race win in China. Chambers getting pole position. Maybe should have been a win. And Vogue getting a race win in race 2. And then we got Ella Lloyd, who also got a race win in race 1. But she's not competing for the championship yet. But I could see her getting up there. Speaking of our rookies, I could also see Alba Larson. She's still doing really well. Ella Lloyd is now behind her in the championship. So hopefully with a couple of good performances, her it might be Lloyd versus Larson. Felbermeyer, I think she needs to get back on her feet a little bit. Jeddah, it just wasn't her track. It just wasn't for her. Houseman had a really good weekend as well. You'll see, like I said, some debutante points in Shishonte and Chong. Do I have any questions going into Miami? I think it's going to be a track quite a few of them like. I think it's obviously again going to benefit the drivers who have been there before, like Berg, Pan, Chambers. So that is it for this video. Obviously our next race, like I keep saying, is Miami, the city that keeps the roof blazing. I can't put the actual song in because I'll get copyrighted. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. My voice keeps going really weird throughout the video, so I do apologize for that. I'm off to go see GB3 and GB4 tomorrow, so I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm hoping to get this video out as soon as possible. But yeah, Miami's next. Who's going to be our next winner? Hopefully this all recorded.